Now that Bob Iger has returned as Disney's CEO, what big ideas are getting thrown out the window? Which decisions are staying in place? And how have guests and cast members gone from cheering his return to fearing it? Find out what's going on behind the scenes of the Disney company today on DFV Guide. Hey everybody, it's AJ for Disney Food Blog. So Disney CEO Bob Iger has been quite the point of interest lately, for better or for worse. But before we jump into today's video, let me get you up to speed. On November 20th, 2022, Bob Iger suddenly replaced Bob Chapek as the CEO of the Walt Disney Company. Whether people disagreed with Chapek's leadership skills or not, the sudden switch came as a shock for many. Nonetheless, with that shock also came a sense of hope for many Disney fans. After all, this wasn't Bob Iger's first rodeo as CEO. He'd already served as the head of the Walt Disney Company between 2005 and 2020 after former CEO Michael Eisner stepped down from the role. During Bob Iger's first time as CEO, the Disney Company seemed to be thriving. The Marvel Cinematic Universe was at its peak, the purchase of the Star Wars franchise led to several expansions and entertainment opportunities, and the parks as a whole just felt like a well-oiled machine. But after a big leadership change from Iger to Chapek in 2021, and several major setbacks after the pandemic closures in 2020, the company seemed to be falling into the limelight for all the wrong reasons. Disney went from this company of promise and fulfillment to one people were mad at. Prices were skyrocketing in the parks, trips were becoming more complicated to plan, Disney Plus was dropping in subscribers, and Orlando even found themselves in the midst of a political standoff, which led to the dissolution of the Reedy Creek Improvement District, aka that district that allowed Disney World to function as its own county, with the ability to make decisions about emergency services, sewage, and more. Now, Reedy Creek is transformed into that Central Florida Tourism Oversight District, which is completely governed by a board selected by the Florida governor. So when Bob Iger was asked to step back into his former role as the company's CEO, the big hope was that he could start fixing things, which was a big ask, considering what Iger stepped back into upon his return. There were some universally loved changes that happened after Iger came back, like the return of free resort parking for hotel guests, the addition of in-ride PhotoPass pictures along with Genie Plus purchases, and Park Pass reservations changes for annual pass holders, which allowed annual pass holders to visit parks without a Park Pass reservation if they were visiting a park after 2 p.m. in most circumstances. But along with these changes also came Iger decisions that were a little more iffy, making guests and cast members alike question whether his leadership change-up was really the answer to all of Disney's problems. And that's where we come in with the meat of today's video. What are the controversial changes that Bob Iger has made since his return? Let's start with a big one that sets the tone for the rest of the video. Entirely restructuring the Walt Disney Company. During Iger's first official earnings call upon his sudden return as CEO, he wanted to make one thing very, very clear to apprehensive investors. Things were going to be changing for the better, and immediately. Iger announced a restructuring of the company, which would be aimed at returning greater authority to Disney's creative leaders. But to put it plainly, Iger's big bad plan was to change what Chapek had already restructured when he first came in as CEO. So I guess that's just, what you do when you take over a company. You just undo what the last guy did. Bob Chapek's former restructuring attempted to focus on cost-cutting measures in an effort to bring profits back up after the worldwide pandemic, while also mitigating the effect that streaming losses had on the company. Disney CFO Christine McCarthy led the cost-cutting effort, while the consulting firm McKinsey & Co. was brought in to review Disney's operations and identify redundancies and cost-saving opportunities. Part of McKinsey's recommendations involved taking decisions about spending on marketing and publicity for films and television programs out of the hands of studio executives and instead centralizing them in another part of the company. Those decisions were made by the Disney Media and Entertainment Division, or DMED, instead of by content executives. Kareem Daniel, who left Disney after Bob Iger's return, led DMED. Reportedly, relations between Mr. Daniel's unit and Disney's creative leaders were often strained. In fact, the Wall Street Journal reported that these and other emerging plans rankled some of the entertainment company's top content executives and became one of the several points that exposed a further rift between the creative and corporate leadership of the company during Mr. Chapek's brief reign as CEO, quote unquote. Some executives also say that they felt the changes would strip them of nearly all their power. So here's where Iger comes in. Iger split up the company into 3 separate divisions. The first is Disney Entertainment, which handles things under the Disney Plus, Disney Movie umbrella. This is now led by Alan Bergman, a former chairman of Disney Studios, and Dana Walden, a former chairwoman of Disney General Entertainment Content. The second is ESPN, aka the sports side of the Disney universe, which continues to be led by Jimmy Pitaro. And the third is Disney Parks, Experiences, and Products, which manages the parks, resorts, cruise lines, and consumer products. Again, leadership continues to fall to Josh D'Amaro in this department. Iger stressed that this Disney Trinity would provide a more cost-effective, coordinated, and streamlined approach to the company's operations and reestablish a direct link between content decisions and financial performance. In other words, there was a lot of cleanup to do, and Iger needed to make sure the most capable hands were being used in their areas of expertise. Specifically, Iger's big focus here was to help the entertainment side of the company, namely Disney Plus, which at the end of 2022 had reported a $4 billion loss for the year. Though this immediate restructuring seemed to be a good move on Iger's end, as the company reported 11.8 million new global streaming subscribers, beating analyst expectations at the end of the 2023 first quarter earnings report. But this major restructure led to one of the most controversial decisions on the company's end. If any of you have been keeping up with the Disney drama this past year, then this point particularly might have you scratching your head. After all, right before Bob Chapek was asked to step down from his position as CEO, Chapek had said the company would be reducing its staffing and implementing a hiring freeze to help save money company-wide after the major hit that the company took with Disney Plus. So with Bob Iger back behind the reins, shouldn't layoffs be done? No, not at all. Though the way Chapek may have gone about announcing these layoffs and hiring freezes wasn't the most savory, it's not what ultimately led to the company finally asking him to step aside. There was a lot that led up to that, which you can learn more about in our original Bob Iger video we released on our channel shortly after his return. When Iger first returned to the Walt Disney Company, updates about these hiring freezes and layoffs were kept pretty hush-hush. But during that first quarterly earnings call in 2023, the layoff talk was finally addressed, and it came right alongside the announcement of Iger's company-wide restructuring plan. Iger announced that the Walt Disney Company would be reducing expenses to improve margins and returns in order to better position the company should any global economic challenges arise, aka a potential recession, which has been looming over the country for a while now. And with these reduced expenses, the company would be saving $5.5 billion in costs. This was a crucial move not just to help rebuild after Disney's past revenue losses, but also to extend a proverbial olive branch to activist investor Nelson Peltz, who had been seeking a seat on the board of directors at Disney and began to mount a proxy battle to encourage investors to vote him onto the board after Disney refused to give him a seat. Peltz had some major beef with how the company was being run and was seeking to improve the poor financial strategies taking place, especially with those streaming services. But Disney refused to appoint him to the board, stating he wasn't qualified for it, nor had he presented any constructive suggestions for change. Peltz later ended the battle with Disney for now after Iger announced these big $5.5 billion changes within the company. So along with the company restructure, Iger announced that the Walt Disney Company would reduce its workforce by 7,000 jobs, a decision Iger mentioned that the company did not make lightly, but one that needed to be made to help cut back on those costs and hit that $5.5 billion reduction. These job cuts will happen throughout all 3 divisions of the Disney Company, but according to D'Amaro, those working frontline roles in park operations will not be impacted by the mass layoffs. Now, the first round of cuts happened recently toward the end of March. Part of these layoffs included a team of about 50 members who'd been working on the next generation storytelling and consumer experiences unit. These were basically the folks working on developing a metaverse at Disney, which would have used virtual reality, augmented reality, and digital universes to eventually create a Disney theme park metaverse. This would have mixed visually enhanced physical reality within a virtual space. Clear as mud, right? Okay. Although Chapek had described the metaverse as the next great storytelling frontier, Iger had concerns about the project. He noted that toxic behavior could become a big issue due to the amount of toxic behavior online already, and pointed out that monitoring these things was going to be something Disney would have to take into major consideration. The second round of job cuts will happen throughout the month of April. Then the final round of cuts will happen just before the start of the summer season. Iger shared that those who will not be impacted by these cuts won't be immune to the struggles ahead of the company in the wake of losing so many colleagues and friends, and asked for continued understanding and collaboration during this time. Safe to say, much like the decision to make these cuts wasn't made lightly, the news wasn't received lightly either, And as these announcements were coming to light, union cast members over at Disney World were already in the midst of negotiating wage increases and healthcare for their new Disney contracts, since the old ones expired in October of 2022. While the original request was to increase Disney's minimum wage to $18 per hour and increase the pay of those who make closer to that by $3 to keep up with inflation, Disney came back with a counteroffer of $1 increase from $15 to $16 per hour, which thousands of Disney workers rejected. But thankfully, that wasn't the end of the story. On March 23rd, Jeff Volley, president of the Walt Disney World Resort, announced that Florida cast members and the Disney company had reached a tentative agreement, which will raise the minimum wage for Disney World's current cast members to $18 per hour by year's end, and provide an industry-leading employment package that includes comprehensive benefits and affordable medical coverage, among other benefits. Though the 7,000 jobs cut will be a major loss for the company, the fact that Disney was able to reach an agreement with its unionized cast members will be a life-changing scenario for many. But Disney still has a long way to go when it comes to fixing their relationships with cast members, because it's not just the money that has some CMs rather upset. Let's talk about Iger's big change when it comes to returning to the office. While those working inside the parks have been having their own financial back and forth with the Disney company, Disney's office-based cast members have been fighting a completely different battle, which came forth shortly after Iger's company-wide restructure. Between 2020 and 2022, Disney has had to make major adjustments to the way they collaborate, especially while mask mandating and social distancing were being highly enforced in all work environments. This led to lots of office-based cast members going from working in the office Monday through Friday to setting up a workspace from home and collaborating with others on their team via FaceTime and Zoom and Google Meet. But as the world has slowly but surely shifted back into a normal daily routine, Bob Iger was eager to return to a sense of normalcy within the company as well. So starting March 1st of this year, he sent out an email to all hybrid cast members informing them of his new mandate, requiring that all office-based cast members should meet in person at the office for at least 4 days out of the week. In the email, Iger shared that he'd been meeting with teams throughout the company over the past few months and had been reminded of the tremendous value in being together with the people you work with. He went on to say that creativity is the heart and soul of who we are and what we do at Disney, quote unquote, and nothing can replace the ability to connect, observe, and create with peers that comes from being physically together, nor the opportunity to grow professionally by learning from leaders and mentors. But not everyone's on board with this change. As it turns out, many hybrid cast members had gotten quite adjusted to their new work-from-home lifestyle. Many had even moved out of state, or at least a few hours away, to work closer to their families or back in their hometowns. More than 2,300 employees signed a petition asking Bob Iger to reconsider, saying that the mandate is likely to have unintended consequences that cause long-term harm to the company. The petition went on to state that this new mandate will lead forced resignations among some of Disney's most hard-to-replace talent and vulnerable communities, while dramatically reducing productivity, output, and efficiency. The signees include a variety of workers across Disney's many businesses, including ABC, 20th Century Studios, Marvel Studios, Hulu, Pixar, and FX. We'll keep you in the loop as we hear more about what the future of this petition holds, but what we can say about this new mandate is that it wasn't really unexpected, especially coming from Iger. Though Iger initially did not create a return to the office mandate when he came back as CEO, he reportedly told employees, "I worry long-term about the negative impact on people who have decided not to spend as much time at the office." That being said, if this mandate risks losing some of the company's biggest talent, then this issue may not be as set in stone as Iger would have hoped. Only time will tell. Next, one of Iger's biggest struggles he now has to face in his returning role as Disney's CEO is how on earth Disney's entertainment division is going to financially recover from a $4 billion loss. And budget cuts ain't going to be enough, because in order to make money, you're going to have to spend it. It's no secret that Iger has a great deal of pride toward Disney's already established intellectual properties, or IP, which is why it's no surprise he's planning on further using these properties to bring Disney Entertainment back to its glory. During this year's first quarterly earnings call, Iger emphasized multiple times that Disney would be taking a closer look at its core brands while focusing on curating the already established Disney, Pixar, Marvel, and Star Wars franchises. Now, what does that mean? Well, that basically means that it costs more to make new stuff than it costs to rehash old stuff, right? So by curating the content Disney already has, they're also incurring fewer costs. And that led to his big announcement of sequels currently in the works at Disney for franchises like Zootopia, Frozen, and Toy Story. Now, a sequel for Zootopia makes sense, especially if Disney goes ahead and follows through with their Blue Sky plans, leading to a possible Zootopia expansion right where Dinoland USA is in Disney's Animal Kingdom currently. You can learn more about all the Blue Sky possibilities in our D23 video from last year. And turning Frozen into a trilogy could go either way. Sure, it'll be fun to see Queen Anna reigning over Arendelle and Elsa further connecting with her role as the fifth spirit, but trilogies have to be handled with care since they run the risk of getting stale for audiences. But Toy Story is the one that has many longtime fans confused. If you haven't seen Toy Story 4 yet, then this is your official spoiler alert warning, so proceed with caution. At the end of Toy Story 4, Woody and Bo Peep go their separate ways while the rest of the gang sticks with Bonnie. This leads to a rather heartbreaking scene where Buzz and Woody say so long, and I gotta stop talking about it now or else I'm gonna get all choked up and not be able to finish the rest of the script. Although the scene is incredibly sad, it's also impactful, which is what makes many other Pixar fans nervous about the possibility of a fifth movie. It's one thing if the movie's gonna be solely focused on Woody and Bo Peep's story, or solely on Bonnie's crew, but if the fifth movie reunites these characters again, this could definitely cheapen the impact of the fourth film. Now, I could go on to talk about potential character burnout and the MCU, but I'm going to skip all that. Maybe we'll make a whole other video about that. And if you have questions or if you have comments about it, please drop them in the comments today. But it's also important to remember that just because Disney is rehashing some of their already established characters doesn't mean they're not working on other new story concepts. We already know the animated film Wish is currently in the works, which will allow a new female protagonist, Asha, who calls on the stars to help her take on a darkness lurking in the shadows. And Pixar's creating 2 new films. The first, Elemental, will come out later in 2023, while the second, Elio, about a boy chosen by the alien race to become Earth's ambassador, will come out sometime in 2024. So yeah, Disney's still got some new stories looming on the horizon, but after other new movies like the recent Strange World did not pull numbers at the box office like Disney had hoped, it's easier to see why they might be using their more successful character franchises as sort of a crutch just in case. But that doesn't mean audiences are sighing to themselves going, really, again, when they see a 5th Toy Story announcement pop up, or another Star Wars spin-off revealed, or one more live-action Disney movie preview that tells the same animated story we all know and love in a non-animated way. But Iger seems hopeful that putting more and more energy into these existing stories is going to help pull the big numbers and create a few more wins for Disney's entertainment department once more. Now, we've talked a lot about how Iger's changes have impacted cast members and audiences alike, but what about park goers, right? Well, in a wild turn of events here, it's actually the lack of action on Iger's part that has many guests miffed. So let's talk about the highly infamous Park Pass reservation system again. Park Pass reservations were introduced to Disney World and Disneyland when the parks reopened after the 2020 closures. The reservations were originally intended to keep capacity down and allow for more social distancing. But after those distancing requirements were lifted, the reservation system stuck around. Disney executives have assured that keeping these reservations in place is highly beneficial for guests. After all, park passes give guests a heads up on whether or not a park has reached its daily capacity weeks in advance, rather than having to find out if a park is already booked up completely after you've made it to the front gates. However, park passes majorly benefit the Disney company as a whole too. Not only is Disney able to keep an eye on park demand, which gives them advance notice for how to set prices for Genie Plus, or how many cast members they need to have on staff, or even how much food they need to have prepared and stocked in their restaurants, but it also allows them to control who is and who isn't going to be let into the parks. Cue the ominous music, right? But I'm getting ahead of myself here. Let's get back to Iger. When he returned as CEO last November, he was asked about potential changes coming to the Park Pass system. At the time, he said he hadn't used the Park Passes himself, and he wanted to hear more about them from tomorrow before jumping into any further comments. But during the first quarterly earnings call this year, Iger still didn't say much about them. What he did say about park capacity in general spoke volumes, though. Iger stated that Disney is able to manage capacity very, very carefully and shift the mix from annual pass holders to those who may come in once a lifetime or just once. Now, this type of comment almost directly mirrors what Bob Chapek noted about Disney's annual pass holders during his previous time as CEO. According to Chapek, annual pass holders tend to use the parks as their personal playground. And though Disney loves that and celebrates that, he said that Disney also has to make sure that there's room in the park for the family from Denver that comes once every 5 years. Chapek previously noted that when Disney didn't have a park pass reservation system and didn't really control the number of annual passes that were distributed daily, the annual passes of value was so great that people were literally coming all the time, and the accessibility of the park was unlimited to them, and that family from Denver would get to the park and not be let in. These are all direct quotes. And yeah, it makes sense. It doesn't seem fair that the person who gets to visit Disney all the time would be let into the parks over the family who doesn't. I mean, does it? But the way the Park Pass reservation system ended up regulating this issue managed to get the Disney company raked across the coals. Lawsuits were filed in both Disneyland and Disney World concerning the Park Pass reservations, and both lawsuits made similar allegations. By keeping the Park Pass system in place, Disney violated certain agreements with both their Magic Key and annual pass holders who had originally purchased pass holder ticket tiers that Disney promised would give them unlimited access to the parks. By using the Park Pass reservation calendars, it seemed that Disney could tell pass holders that parks were already booked up for the day, even though out-of-state non-pass holders could still book a reservation in those parks just fine, which is a surefire way to burn bridges when it comes to your most reliable guests. Though Disney is still busy singing the praises of its park passes, Iger and the company are currently working on improving this system to make it fair for all guests from here on out. Beginning on April 18th, annual pass holders will be allowed to enter the parks after 2 p.m. without a reservation, like we talked about at the beginning of this video, and this helps give a little more park visiting spontaneity back to the hands of the pass holders, as well as guarantee that an AP can enter a park whenever and however they want to during the week without having to do a whole lot of extra planning to pull it off, unless it's a Saturday or a Sunday and they're going to Magic Kingdom. You can't do that. But it's unlikely that Iger will be taking away Park Pass reservations anytime soon. Hopefully he'll continue to see more changes similar to these that'll help improve the system. After all, Josh D'Amaro did mention that more Park Pass reservation changes are on the horizon. D'Amaro fully admitted that as much as these Park Pass reservations do help Disney create, quote, better experiences for guests and cast members alike, one problem is the loss of serendipity. He went on to say Disney is trying to create ease while also making sure the guest experience is good. According to D'Amaro, the changes recently announced to the Disney World pass holder requirements are, quote, just the start of changes to park passes, and that there are individuals planning right now on how to improve the process. He went on to share that Disney's working to make the reservation process easy and flexible. And in the meantime, if you are planning on taking a trip to Disney World or Disneyland in the future, don't forget to secure those park passes well in advance. And make sure you double check Disney's Park Pass calendars online before you purchase your park tickets to make sure the days you want to visit are still available to book. So let's boil all this down to one solid point that may be kind of hard for us to swallow. Bob Iger isn't here to make us happy. He's not here to cut park prices by half or fix everything that people have been pinpointing as wrong and unjust. He's probably not going to bring back Magical Express. He is here to help a successful company recover from years of major financial losses. Granted, that doesn't mean he doesn't want to make guests and cast members happy. Of course he does. After all, that's how the company makes their revenue in the first place, satisfied customers returning to their parks and streaming services over and over again. But that doesn't mean that the changes you want to see happen are going to happen. It might even mean Iger and the team have to make some changes that go against the majority opinion in the hopes that the ends will, fingers crossed, justify the means. At the end of the day, Iger and the Walt Disney Company have to decide what's going to be the best direction for the company as a whole to keep them out of the hole. But Iger did state upon his return in a company-wide email that he was extremely optimistic for the future. He went on to say, Disney and its incomparable brands and franchises hold a special place in the hearts of so many people around the globe. I am deeply honored to be asked to again lead this remarkable team. Now, as Iger works with these 3 new divisions to help strengthen the company from a business standpoint, he also wants to uphold what made the company thrive in the first place, right? Its creative endeavors. That's Iger's background. He's a movie guy, a studios guy. And as Iger announced the restructuring of the company, he stated that the Disney company is fueled by storytelling and creativity. Virtually every dollar Disney earns emanates from something the company created. A concept that Iger plans to keep at the helm of the proverbial ship he's steering across stormy and unprecedented waters. Bob Iger's role as CEO was only set to last until 2024, giving the team and himself hopefully enough time to find a worthy successor to fill Iger's shoes. So that means there's going to be plenty more Iger news rising to the surface during 2023 and beyond. Make sure to keep coming back here for all future behind-the-scenes updates as we learn more and more about the future of the Walt Disney Company. Thanks for listening, everyone. Thanks for watching. As always, this is AJ for Disney Food Blog, and we'll see you real soon.